The night I discovered my husband was cheating on me, I did not scream. I stood in the dark hallway outside his office and understood that my marriage was not the only thing he had stolen.
My name is Claire Bennett. I was 30, 8 years old, married for 12 years, and living in a quiet suburb outside Chicago when my life split in two. Before that night, I believed my husband, Daniel, was ambitious, imperfect, and sometimes distant. After that night, I learned he was also patient, calculating, and dangerous. The woman in his office was Vanessa Cole, the director of development at Hawthorne Medical Group, where Daniel worked as chief financial officer. I recognized her voice before I saw her. She had attended our Christmas party 2 months earlier. She had eaten food from my kitchen, praised my decorating, and hugged me goodbye. Now she was pressed against my husband beside the desk I had bought him for our 10th anniversary. Once the audit is finished, we can stop pretending, Vanessa whispered. Daniel laughed softly. Claire will sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. That sentence hurt more than the kiss. I backed away before they could see me. My hand covered my mouth, but no sound came out. I walked downstairs, picked up my purse, and left through the garage. I drove 3 blocks before pulling over beneath a dead streetlight. My whole body shook. I wanted to call my sister. I wanted to call Daniel and tell him I knew. But the word audit kept circling in my mind. So did his certainty that I would sign something. I had spent 15 years as a forensic bookkeeper. I found missing money for small businesses, law firms, and nonprofit organizations. Daniel often joked that I could smell a false invoice through a locked filing cabinet. Yet I had never examined my own marriage. That changed before sunrise. I returned home at 1 in the morning. Vanessa's car was gone. Daniel was upstairs, pretending to sleep. I entered the kitchen quietly and saw his leather briefcase on the counter. Normally, I would never have opened it. That night, privacy felt like a rule only one of us had obeyed. Inside were quarterly reports, a tablet, 2 pens, and a folded receipt from the Ashford Grand Hotel. The receipt was dated 3 weeks earlier, when Daniel had told me he was attending a conference in Milwaukee. It listed a 2-night suite, room service for 2, champagne, and a spa treatment. The charge had not gone to our household credit card. It had been billed to Meridian Strategy Partners. I had never heard that name. I photographed the receipt and put it back exactly where I found it. Then I opened the small desk where we kept bank statements. Most were ordinary. But one envelope contained a notice for a home equity line of credit with a balance of $180,000. My signature appeared at the bottom. I had never seen the document before. The signature looked like mine, but the final curve of the B was too sharp. Daniel had watched me sign thousands of checks. He knew every movement of my hand. I sat at the kitchen table until the sky turned gray. By then, my heartbreak had made room for something colder. Daniel was not planning to leave me. He was planning to use me. At 6:30, he came downstairs in a charcoal suit and kissed my forehead. "You got home late," he said. "Client emergency. Everything okay?" I looked into the face I had loved for 12 years. I'm still figuring that out. He poured coffee without noticing the warning in my voice. Before leaving, he placed a folder beside my plate. "I need your signature on a few refinancing documents. Nothing urgent." "Tonight is fine." I opened the folder after he left. The top page transferred my interest in our house to a trust controlled by Daniel. Another page guaranteed a business loan for Meridian Strategy Partners. If the company failed, the lender could take our house and pursue me personally. Daniel had marked every signature line with a yellow tab. He expected me to sign my own destruction over dinner. I called in sick, locked the doors, and began working. Meridian Strategy Partners had been registered in Delaware 18 months earlier. Its listed manager was a corporate agent. Its mailing address was a private box in downtown Chicago. Public records showed no employees, no website, and no ordinary business activity. I searched our computer for the name and found nothing. Then I remembered that Daniel had set up a network printer in his office. Its memory stored recent scan destinations. One destination caught my attention: Meridian Archive at a private email domain. I did not try to break into the account. I did not need to. The name connected Daniel's office to the shell company, and that gave me a direction. My next call was to Evelyn Shaw, an attorney I had worked with during a charity embezzlement case. Evelyn was 60, silver-haired, and incapable of being intimidated. I told her about the affair, the forged credit line, and the documents Daniel wanted me to sign. She was silent for several seconds. "Do not confront him," she finally said. "Do not sign anything. Photograph every page. Open a new bank account at a bank you have never used. Change your passwords from a device he cannot access. And Claire, assume this is worse than it looks." I wanted her to tell me I was overreacting. Instead, she said, "Men who steal signatures rarely stop at one." That afternoon, I made copies and returned the folder to the exact position Daniel had left it. I opened a new account, froze my credit, and ordered full credit reports. The reports revealed 2 more surprises. 8 months earlier, someone had applied for a business credit card in my name. The balance was $47,000. 3 months after that, someone had listed me as guarantor on an equipment lease from Meridian. The equipment did not exist. By dinner, I knew Daniel had been building a financial trap around me for nearly a year. He came home carrying red wine and flowers. "For my favorite accountant," he said. I smiled because I needed him comfortable. "What did you do?" He laughed. "Can a husband be nice?" During dinner, he talked about summer travel and replacing the kitchen cabinets. Then he slid the folder toward me. "Just routine paperwork." I turned the pages slowly. "The bank language is dense. I want Evelyn to review it." His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Evelyn Shaw. She understands contracts." His smile returned, but his eyes changed. "Lawyers make everything complicated. We could lose the rate if we delay. Then the bank can send clean copies tomorrow." For 1 second, I saw anger beneath his charm. Then he reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable." At 2:15 the next morning, I woke to the soft glow of his phone. Daniel stood in the hallway, whispering. "She didn't sign," he said. "No, don't panic. I'll handle Claire." I closed my eyes before he returned. The next phase of my investigation began with the hotel receipt. On Friday afternoon, Daniel told me he had a board strategy meeting. I watched him leave in his black San, waited 10 minutes, and followed. He drove into Chicago and parked outside the Ashford Grand. Vanessa arrived 5 minutes later. They did not touch in public. They entered separately, like people who had practiced. I photographed both arrivals from my car, then crossed the street and entered through a side door. Daniel and Vanessa met near the elevators. I stayed behind a marble column. "The transfer clears Monday," Vanessa said. "And the audit?" Daniel asked. "Moved up. They start Wednesday." His jaw tightened. "Then Claire signs this weekend." The elevator opened, and they stepped inside. I did not follow. I had learned enough. This was not simply an affair hidden beneath expense reports. Vanessa and Daniel were moving money, an audit was approaching, and my forged signature was part of their escape route. I took a seat in the hotel lounge and opened my laptop. Hawthorne Medical Group was privately held, but several public charities listed payments to it. I searched corporate filings, vendor databases, court records, and archived web pages. Meridian appeared nowhere. Until I compared its mailing address with Hawthorne's vendor list from a public hospital board packet. There it was. Meridian's strategy partners had received consulting payments from Hawthorne totaling nearly $3 million in 14 months. The descriptions were vague: regional analysis, acquisition support, compliance preparation. Services difficult to measure and easy to fake. I sent the public records to Evelyn. She called immediately. "Come to my office." When I arrived, Evelyn had brought in Marcus Reed, a former federal investigator who specialized in corporate fraud. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s who listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. "Does Daniel know you can trace money this well?" "He married me because of it," I said. Marcus shook his head. "No, he married you despite it. That means he believes he has a way to make the evidence point at you." The thought made my stomach drop. He explained the likely scheme. Daniel approved payments from Hawthorne to Meridian. Vanessa, because of her position, could create contracts or confirm that work had been completed. Meridian received the money. Then they moved it through additional accounts. But the shell company had been connected to my identity through forged loans and credit applications. If the audit found fraud, Daniel could claim I controlled Meridian and had manipulated him. I was the bookkeeper. I understood financial systems. I had occasionally consulted for Hawthorne years earlier. To an investigator seeing only selected documents, I would look capable and connected. "They are building you into the story," Marcus said. I stared at the table. "How do I prove the truth?" "We'll let them keep writing," he replied. "Then we preserve every draft. For the next 9 days, I lived 2 lives. In one, I was Daniel's trusting wife. I cooked dinner, asked about his meetings, and apologized for being cautious about the loan documents. I let him believe Evelyn was simply slow. In the other, I documented a conspiracy. Evelyn contacted the lender and submitted a formal fraud notice regarding the forged credit line. She did not accuse Daniel by name. She asked the bank to preserve the application, identity, verification records, device information, and security footage. Marcus hired a licensed investigator to photograph Daniel and Vanessa entering the hotel and visiting Meridian's private mailbox. He also found a storage unit leased by Meridian. I searched only records I had the legal right to access. Our joint tax files showed that Daniel had omitted several accounts. Household statements revealed cash withdrawals, matching the dates of hotel meetings. Our smart home system showed Vanessa entering our house while I was away on 2 business trips. Then Daniel made his first mistake. He asked me to repair an external drive. "It keeps disconnecting," he said casually. "Can you copy the finance presentation before it dies?" He gave me written permission in a text message because I told him I did not want to touch company material without it. The drive contained the presentation. It also contained an automatically saved spreadsheet named Vendor Transition Matrix. I opened it because its folder was part of the directory Daniel had told me to copy. The spreadsheet listed Meridian payments, transfer dates, and distributions to coded accounts. One column was labeled CB Approval, my initials. Attached PDF files contained consulting authorizations, bearing my forged electronic signature. Daniel had prepared his evidence against me on a drive he placed in my hands. I copied the requested directory exactly as instructed, preserved the original, and made a forensic image for Evelyn under Marcus's direction. We recorded every step. The spreadsheet showed that a final transfer of $640,000 was scheduled for Monday. After that, most of Meridian's money would move to an account in the Cayman Islands. It also contained a note CB separation package after closing. My separation package was not a divorce settlement. It was blame. That evening, Daniel watched me from across the kitchen. "You seem distracted?" he said. "Work. Anything I can help with. Not unless you know why honest people start lying." The room became very still. Then he smiled. "Fear. Usually. Fear of what? Losing what they think belongs to them." I held his gaze. "Sometimes they lose it because it never belonged to them." He studied me for another moment, then changed the subject. The following morning, someone tried to access my new bank account. The login failed because of two-factor authentication. That night, I found a tiny tracking device beneath my car. I photographed it and called Marcus. "Leave it in place," he said. "Drive normally." Now we know he's worried. Worried men make mistakes. Daniel made his second one on Sunday. He told me his mother had suffered chest pain in Indianapolis. He packed a bag and said he would return Tuesday. I called his mother after he left. She was gardening. Daniel drove to a private airfield in Wisconsin. The investigator followed far enough to photograph him meeting Vanessa beside a chartered plane. They carried 2 large suitcases and a document case. They were preparing to leave before the audit. Evelyn contacted federal authorities that afternoon. The evidence was strong enough to interest them. But the agents needed time, and the final transfer was scheduled for the next morning. We needed Daniel to believe nothing had changed. So I called him. "I signed the papers," I said. There was a pause. "You did?" Evelyn kept adding warnings. I got tired of waiting. Relief softened his voice. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'll bring them to your office Monday morning." "No. Leave them at home. I'll collect them tonight." "I thought you were in Indianapolis." Another pause. Mom improved. "I'm heading back." He returned at 11:40. I had placed a folder on his desk containing copies, marked for legal review. The signature pages looked complete from a distance, but the signatures were printed samples, not originals, and the documents had no legal effect. Daniel did not examine them carefully. He photographed the pages and sent the images to someone. Our investigator watched from a car across the street as Daniel left again at midnight and drove to Vanessa's condominium. At 8 Monday morning, Hawthorne's board gathered for what Daniel believed was an emergency approval meeting. Vanessa had arranged the meeting to authorize the final Meridian payment. She claimed the money was needed to complete a confidential acquisition. I was not supposed to be there. At 8:20, I walked into the conference room with Evelyn. Marcus, 2 federal agents, Hawthorne's outside counsel, and the chair of the audit committee. Daniel's face lost all color. Vanessa stood so quickly that her chair struck the wall. I placed the hotel receipt on the table. "You should have destroyed this," I said. Daniel recovered quickly. "Claire, this is a private board meeting." "Not anymore." One of the agents closed the door. The audit chair asked Daniel to remain seated. Outside counsel announced that the payment had been frozen and Daniel's authority suspended. Vanessa looked at him. "You said she signed." Daniel turned toward her with murder in his eyes. That was the first crack. The second came when the agents displayed the forged home equity application and the device records supplied by the bank. The application had been submitted from Daniel's office computer. Security footage showed him entering the branch with a woman wearing a dark wig and sunglasses. The woman was Vanessa. Then Marcus presented photographs of the mailbox, hotel meetings, storage unit, and private airfield. Evelyn produced my dated fraud notices, proving I had reported the forged documents before Daniel knew he was under investigation. Finally, outside counsel displayed the vendor transition matrix from Daniel's drive. along with the message in which he had authorized me to copy it. Daniel tried the story he had prepared. Claire created those files, he said. She runs Meridian. She manipulated all of us. I had expected the accusation. It still hurt to hear my husband say it. The audit chair turned to me. Your response. I opened a second folder. Meridian was registered on March 4th of last year at 10:17 a.m. At that exact time, I was testifying in federal court in St. Louis. The transcript and courthouse security records prove it. The registration payment came from a virtual card issued to Daniel's corporate account. The original authorization files were created on his laptop before they appeared on the external drive. And the electronic certificates attached to my supposed signatures were purchased with Vanessa's company card. Vanessa whispered, Daniel, fix this. He ignored her. I continued. There's one more thing. The coded accounts in Daniel's spreadsheet looked anonymous, but one distribution pattern repeated every month. I had traced the amounts to mortgage payments on a lake house in Michigan. The property was not owned by Daniel or Vanessa. It belonged to Robert Cole, Vanessa's estranged father. Vanessa stared at the screen. My father. Daniel's expression told her the truth before I did. He had been hiding money from her too. Vanessa believed they were stealing together and would escape together. Daniel had planned to leave her behind once the final transfer cleared. The private flight was not scheduled for 2 passengers. Charter records showed only Daniel on the manifest. He had asked Vanessa to bring the original contracts, claiming they would store them safely. In reality, he intended to take the evidence and disappear. You used me, Vanessa said. Daniel leaned toward her. Be quiet. You said Claire was responsible. You said we would tell them she created Meridian. No one in the room moved. Vanessa kept talking. She described the false contracts, the hotel meetings, the forged approvals, and Daniel's promise that I would take the blame. She revealed passwords, account locations, and the name of the banker who helped arrange the offshore transfer. Daniel tried to stop her, but every word tightened the case against him. That was the revenge I had not planned. The woman he chose over me became the witness who destroyed him. The agents arrested Daniel before 9:30. As they placed him in handcuffs, he looked at me with disbelief rather than shame. You ruined my life, he said. I shook my head. I only audited it. Vanessa was arrested later that morning. She cooperated almost immediately, but cooperation did not erase what she had done. She had created false contracts, impersonated me at a bank, and helped steal millions. Her evidence reduced her sentence, not her guilt. The investigation continued for months. 3 days after the arrests, federal agents searched our house. Even though I had invited the truth into my life, watching strangers label our belongings as evidence made me feel exposed. They photographed Daniel's office, removed 2 computers, and opened every locked drawer. Beneath a false bottom in his filing cabinet, they found passports, stacks of cash, and a second phone. The phone contained messages between Daniel and Vanessa going back almost 2 years. At first, their relationship had been business. Vanessa identified vendor budgets that could absorb false expenses. Daniel created Meridian and approved payments just below the level that required full board review. Later, the messages became personal. They complained about their lives, planned hotel meetings, and imagined a future together. Then, about 6 months before I discovered them, Daniel's tone changed. He began asking Vanessa to sign documents alone. He encouraged her to use her personal phone. He told her to keep original contracts at her condominium. At the same time, he created records suggesting I had approved Meridian's invoices. He was building 2 escape routes. If the audit never came, he would take the money. If it did, He would blame Vanessa first and me second. I was not the only woman he betrayed. I was simply the one he underestimated most. The agents also found a draft letter supposedly written by me. It claimed I had created Meridian to hide consulting income and that Daniel knew nothing about it. The letter ended with a sentence saying I was leaving the country because I could not face the consequences. My forged signature sat beneath those words. When Evelyn showed me the copy, I had to sit down. Was he planning to hurt me? I asked. We don't know, she said carefully. The letter could have been intended to explain my disappearance, or it could have been another piece of financial theater. Investigators found no direct plan for violence. Still, Daniel had tracked my car and tried to access my private account. For several weeks, I slept at my sister Rachel's house and changed my daily routine. Rachel blamed herself for not seeing the truth. She remembered Daniel leaving family dinners to take calls. She remembered Vanessa's name appearing on weekends. Like me, she had accepted each detail because there was always a reasonable explanation. I should have warned you, she said one night. Warned me about what? A phone call. A late meeting. I don't know. That is exactly the point. He made every lie small enough to forgive. Saying it aloud helped me understand how deception survives. Daniel had not asked me to believe one impossible story. He had asked me to accept 100 ordinary ones. The months before his plea were the hardest. His attorney suggested that I had neglected the marriage and driven him toward Vanessa. Anonymous accounts sent messages calling me vindictive. Someone leaked a photograph of me entering Hawthorne with the agents, and strangers online decided I had orchestrated the fraud to punish an unfaithful husband. I wanted to defend myself publicly. Evelyn advised me to remain silent until the criminal case ended. Silence felt different this time. In my marriage, I had been silent because I doubted myself. During the case, I was silent because the evidence could speak without me. Marcus prepared me for testimony anyway. He sat across from me in a plain conference room and attacked every weak point in my story. Why had I opened Daniel's briefcase? Why had I followed him? Why had I copied the drive? Was I angry about the affair? Had I ever used Hawthorne's systems? Could I have created the forged files? The questions felt insulting, but Marcus did not soften them. The defense will not ask whether you are hurt, he explained. They will ask whether hurt made you dishonest. So I answered with dates, records, and boundaries. I had opened property inside my own home after hearing Daniel discuss documents he wanted me to sign. I had photographed public behavior from lawful locations. I had copied only the directory Daniel authorized me to copy. Independent timestamps and banking records existed before I knew about them. Facts became stepping stones across a river of emotion. One afternoon, the prosecutor played a recovered voice memo. Daniel had apparently recorded it for himself while driving. Claire notices details, he said in the recording, but she hates conflict. If I keep things normal, she'll choose peace over suspicion. I asked to hear it twice. For years, I had considered my patience an act of love. Daniel had studied it as a weakness. He knew I preferred conversation to accusation. He knew I checked my anger before speaking. He believed decency made me predictable. That recording freed me from the final piece of shame. I had not failed to become suspicious soon enough. I had behaved honestly inside a relationship where honesty was being weaponized against me. The prosecutor eventually offered Daniel a plea agreement. Before accepting it, he requested a private meeting with me through our lawyers. Evelyn advised against it, but the choice was mine. I agreed to a video conference from her office. I wanted to see whether the man I had married could say one true thing when lying no longer helped him. Daniel appeared on a screen in county detention clothing. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. "You look well," he said. "Why did you ask to see me?" He lowered his eyes. "I wanted to apologize." Then apologize. He said he had felt trapped by expectations. He said Hawthorne underpaid him. He said Vanessa pushed the first false contract. He said the offshore account had been intended to protect us if the company failed. Every apology contained a defense. Every confession placed part of the blame in someone else's hands. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" I asked. I was trying to find the right time. "Did you forge the letter saying I had fled the country?" His face tightened. "My lawyer told me not to discuss evidence." "Did you plan to leave me in prison for what you did?" He looked toward someone outside the camera's view. That silence was his only honest answer. Before ending the call, he asked if I still had his father's watch. It was worth several $1,000s, and he claimed it was a family heirloom. I realized then that he had not requested the meeting for forgiveness. He wanted property. "The watch is with the government," I said. "You bought it through Meridian." For the first time, his mask disappeared completely. "You think you're so clever," he snapped. "No, Daniel. I think I finally stopped pretending you were." I ended the call. The next morning, he accepted the plea. Authorities recovered most of the final transfer before it left the country. They seized the Michigan Lake House, money from several hidden accounts, and valuables Daniel had purchased through Meridian. Hawthorne's insurer covered part of the remaining loss. The forged debts were removed from my credit record. The home equity line was declared fraudulent. The business guarantee Daniel had wanted me to sign never became valid. Our divorce was shorter than I expected. Daniel fought over everything at first: the house, retirement accounts, even furniture. But once prosecutors added identity theft and witness tampering charges, his attorneys encouraged him to cooperate. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy, wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Vanessa pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud. The banker joined them after account records showed he had received secret payments. At Daniel's sentencing, I sat in the second row. He looked smaller than I remembered. Without the tailored suit, expensive watch, and practiced confidence, he seemed ordinary. That surprised me. For months, I had thought of him as a monster. But monsters are easy to recognize. Daniel had been more dangerous, because he looked like the man who carried groceries inside and remembered how I took my coffee. The judge invited me to speak. I walked to the front with a single page, but I did not read it. "For 12 years, I said, I believed marriage meant sharing a life. Daniel believed it meant gaining access to mine. He stole my signature, used my work history to build a false story, borrowed against my home, and planned to leave me with his crimes. The money can be returned. My credit can be repaired. But trust does not come back because a court orders restitution." Daniel stared at the table. I used to ask myself when he stopped loving me. Now I understand that question does not matter. The important question is when I stopped protecting the memory of a man who never truly existed. The judge sentenced him to 11 years in federal prison. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Revenge stories often end with the villain falling and the hero smiling. Real life is quieter. Justice does not restore the years you gave away. It does not remove every photograph or silence every memory. It simply gives pain a boundary. It tells you where the damage ends and where your new life may begin. For a while, I stayed in the house because selling felt like another loss. Then one morning, I realized every room held a version of me that had waited for Daniel to come home. I listed the property that afternoon. I bought a smaller brick townhouse near the lake. It had tall windows, uneven wooden floors, and no office door at the end of a dark hallway. I painted the kitchen yellow. I traveled to New Mexico with my sister. I joined a weekend walking group. Slowly, my days stopped organizing themselves around what Daniel had done. Evelyn and I created a small nonprofit program for people facing financial abuse inside marriage. We taught them how to check credit reports, preserve records, secure accounts, and ask for help without shame. The first woman who called me was named Teresa. Her husband had opened 3 cards in her name and convinced her she was too careless to understand money. She apologized through the entire conversation. I told her the words Evelyn had once told me. Someone else's deception is not proof of your foolishness. Teresa froze her credit that day. 6 months later, she sent me a photograph from the apartment she had rented on her own. She was smiling beside a second-hand sofa. That photograph meant more to me than Daniel's sentence. 2 years after the arrest, a padded envelope arrived without a return address. Inside was the original hotel receipt. I had given it to the government as evidence, and the case was closed, so it had been returned with other property. The paper was faded. Daniel's room number and the champagne charge were still visible. For several minutes, I held the object that had changed my life. Then I understood that the receipt had never destroyed my marriage. It had revealed what was already broken. I placed it in a metal bowl on my balcony and lit one corner with a match. The flame traveled slowly across the paper. The hotel name curled into black ash. The room number disappeared. The final thing to burn was the total at the bottom. I watched the smoke rise into the evening air and felt no anger. Daniel had believed my trust made me weak. Vanessa had believed my silence meant I knew nothing. Both of them mistook patience for surrender. They were wrong. I did not win because I became crueler than they were. I won because I stayed calm, followed the truth, and refused to sign the ending they had written for me. The receipt he left behind was supposed to be evidence of his secret life. Instead, it became the first page of mine.